Ladies and gentlemen, we are focusing on something that the nation needs to focus. And as we are looking at the IIT Guwahati death by suicide, let's look at the visuals that are coming out of this premier institute of India. Thousands of people taking to the streets. Thousands of people, thousands of students coming out inside their campus, demanding justice. They are angry, they are upset. 2 death by suicides in IIT Guwahati itself in just a span of 1 month. There have been 4 deaths on campus. 4 deaths on campus just this year alone. 2 of them death by suicides. There have been demands, increasing demands from students. Many of them are coming out right now. I mean, these are scenes literally unprecedented. There have been so many death by suicides in IIT, and we'll bring out the facts in a short while from now, but these scenes are unprecedented. They are talking about the stress that they are going on, and many of them have given out their demands in detail. We will go to each one of them. But very quickly, let's just listen in to what the father of this 21-year-old student who died by suicide has to say, even as his colleagues remember him as a very bright student. Let's listen to both of these.
देखिए मामला तो ऐसे वो डिप्रेशन का लग रहा है, लेकिन अब हम लोग क्योंकि डॉक्टर नहीं है तो कुछ बोल भी नहीं सकते, और क्योंकि देखे नहीं हैं, हम अपने साक्षात आंखों से नहीं देखे हैं तो अभी भी नहीं बता सकते। हाँ, बैक पेपर IIT गुवाहाटी में कंप्यूटर साइंस का स्टूडेंट थे, तो चूँकि CS जो IIT का जो है ना, वो जो भी है सब चॉइस पहला नंबर पर करते हैं, तो वो लिए थे। लेने के बाद 3 में बैक लगा था, एक का बैक वो शॉर्ट नोटिस दे के एग्जाम कराया, उसमें पास हो गए। 2 था वो 13 तारीख से होने वाला था। और एक बार स्कूल से रिस्ट्रिकेट के वो बोला हमको कि पापा स्कूल से रिस्ट्रिकेट करने के लिए बोल रहे हैं, तो मैं उनको डीन उनसे बोला कि क्या आप ऐसे बोले थे, तो वो बोले कि नहीं हम लोग शॉर्ट नोटिस दे के फिर दोबारा एग्जाम करा लेते हैं, हम लोग किसी को घर नहीं भेजते हैं।
First of all, leniency in terms of academic attendance policies from the campus, like 75% attendance policies are like way too much strictly inhibited. I know there are reasons for it, but quite a few of times there are undeniable situations. He was doing a course of elemental number theory, which is a course in the 3rd sem of the CSE department, and like around 40 students were failed on that course just because they didn't pass the attendance criteria, though they had good marks in the end semester exams. Like they graced the exams, many of them graced, but they still got an F grade. That's actually sad now. If you pass the exams just because of his attendance was very close to 75%. He even talked to the college officials, the higher ups, which are there, Dean of Student Affairs, Dean of Academic Affairs. He like walked into all the departments possible, but still, nothing changed the fact that he still got an FA.
Well, this is definitely not an IIT Guwahati problem alone. An RTI response states in 19 years, 115 deaths by suicides have been reported in IIT alone. 98 of these were on campus. An internal survey by IIT student organization states academic stress at a whopping 61%, the one big cause for death by suicides, followed by several other reasons that 12% stated job insecurity, 10% stated family issues, harassment and other reasons are among others. But look at the first reason, a whopping 61% academic stress. And as I said, amid all of this, the family of Bimlesh remembers him as somebody who was hardworking, who was bright. That's what the students also say. But he was very worried about his backlog papers. While all of this is extremely disturbing, it isn't just one student's story. Between January 2018 to March 2023, here's a look at death by suicides among students at premier institutes of India. And this is according to Education Ministry. IITs have had 35 CUs 29, NITs 24, AIMS have had 11, and IIMs have had 4. Just look at it. Look at this data. It's so important for us. It's data. For families, these have been lives, and this is just between 2018 to 2023. And this is none other by Education Ministry given out in the Parliament. And there's more data that points towards India's suicide epidemic. Over the past decade, 96% increase in suicides among students, 99% increase in suicides among male students, and 92% increase in death by suicides among female students. 7.6% suicides by students among the total cases in 2022. This is the latest report by the IC3. And the researcher for this will be joining us in a bit. In fact, across the country, there's been a 2% increase in death by suicide rate. But when it comes to students, it's a 4% increase in death by suicide rates, double the national average. According to NCRB data, biggest cause of students' death by suicides across the world. In fact, according to the biggest cause for students' death worldwide has been road accidents. But in India, if you look at it, it has been death by suicides. I'm being joined right now by panelists who are right at the heart of this discourse. First up, I'm being joined by Soumya's parents, Shailendra Katiyar, as well as mother Babita. I'm also going to be joined by Anand Kumar, who's the founder for Super 30, Ganesh Kohli, who's a founder for IC3 Movement, and Dheeraj Singh, who's a founder for Global IIT Alumni Support Group, as well as Dr. Harish Shetty, who's a psychiatrist. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining us. But first, I'm being joined by Shailendra Katiyar as well as Babita, who the parents of Soumya, who died by suicide in IIT just around August 9th. सर, मैडम, हमारे साथ जुड़ने के लिए बहुत शुक्रिया। आप जब अब खबर देख रहे हैं टीवी में, एक और स्टूडेंट की डेथ बाय सुसाइड हो चुकी है, आप इसको कैसे देखते हैं?
अब हमको तो ये एक सदमा लगता है कि हमारी बेटी गई तो गई, एक बेटा और चला गया। बस ये हमें सदमा लग रहा है कि ना उस बेटी का खुलासा हो पाया और ये बेटा भी चला गया।
जब आप अब सुन रहे हैं कैसे बच्चे, स्टूडेंट्स, आईआईटी जो स्टूडेंट्स हैं वो प्रोटेस्ट कर रहे हैं, कल प्रोटेस्ट किया, आज प्रोटेस्ट कर रहे हैं, उनका प्रोटेस्ट पूरा चलता जा रहा है, एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन ने उनसे बात करने की कोशिश की है, लेकिन प्रोटेस्ट जारी हैं। आप क्या कहना चाहेंगे आईआईटी से, इस देश से, इन बच्चों से?
मैं क्या कहना चाहूंगी, मुझे तो कुछ समझ नहीं आ रहा। बच्चे चूंकि वहां पर हैं, वो वहां की सिचुएशन को देख रहे हैं, तो वो क्या कर रहे हैं वो जाने, लेकिन मुझे तो न्याय चाहिए।
आपके लिए न्याय का क्या अर्थ है? आप जब न्याय चाहिए बोलते हैं, आपके लिए वो क्या मतलब रखता है?
हमारे लिए न्याय का मतलब ये है कि ये घटनाएं क्यों हो रही हैं, जो कि ना ये समझ में, जो एक रहस्य में बन गई हैं कि वो मेरी बेटी तो मुझसे 11 बजे रात में अच्छे से बात हुई वीडियो कॉल से, और सुबह मुझे फ़ोन 10:34 पर आता है कि उसने सुसाइड कर लिया। तो ऐसा मुझे एकदम से इम्पॉसिबल लगा। तो क्या उसके साथ ऐसा हुआ जो वो इस कंडीशन पर आई? वो इतनी जॉली नेचर की, और वो एक कवित्री, वो एक आर्टिस्ट, वो एक इंजीनियर, और इसके बाद उसके साथ क्या ऐसा हुआ 9 घंटे में, मेरे कम्युनिकेशन गैप के बाद, कि वो इस तरह से मुझे खबर दी गई। और जब मैं वहाँ पहुँची तो मुझे कमरे में डेड बॉडी नहीं मिली, उसका कोई सामान नहीं मिला।
आपकी बेटी ने आपसे कभी बात किया कि वो कुछ ज़्यादा स्ट्रेस फील कर रही हैं, उनसे कोप नहीं किया जा रहा है, वो हैंडल नहीं कर पा रही हैं पढ़ाई का? उन्होंने कभी ऐसा कुछ बोला?
उन्होंने कभी ऐसा कुछ नहीं बोला, बल्कि हमारे हस्बैंड अभी 4 तारीख को डीन साहब से मिलकर आए, तो उन्होंने खुद ही उनका एकेडमिक दिखाया, बोले इसका एकेडमिक बहुत अच्छा है, पढ़ने में भी अच्छी थी और पता नहीं क्या ऐसा स्ट्रेस था उसको जो ये किया उन्होंने।
पुलिस ने, आईआईटी ने कुछ भी बोला? उनके कोई इन्वेस्टिगेशन में कुछ पता चला आपको? बोलते हैं जब भी कोई हादसा हो, एक क्लोजर होना चाहिए, उसका कारण पता होना चाहिए। आप इसको कभी भुला नहीं पाएंगे जिंदगी में, लेकिन अब जो आपकी परिस्थिति है, आप उसको कैसे एक्सप्लेन करेंगे जो आपकी बात सुन रहे हैं आज?
अब आज की परिस्थिति तो ये है कि मुझे इतना ज़्यादा कल वाली घटना से इतना ज़्यादा सदमा लगा है, क्योंकि मैं खुद ही नहीं किसी सिचुएशन पर पहुँच पा रही थी कि बिटिया से 11 बजे रात को बात होने के बाद फिर जब हम वहाँ सुसाइड की खबर पर पहुँचते हैं, तो कमरे में बॉडी नहीं मिलती है, उसका मुझे इलेक्ट्रॉनिक सामान नहीं मिलता, उसकी डायरी नहीं मिलती है और हमें कॉलेज प्रशासन के कोई भी कैंडिडेट, वार्डन साहब, डीन साहब या एचओडी साहब कोई नहीं मिल पाते हैं। और रात 2 बजे जब हमको सिक्योरिटी गार्डों से ये पता चलता है कि डेड बॉडी नारायणा हॉस्पिटल में रखी हुई है। तो रात 2 बजे जब हम वहाँ पहुँचते हैं, तो बेटी के नाक से खून निकला था इतना ज़्यादा कि उसके बाल सारे गीले थे और स्ट्रेचर में करीब 1 फीट के डायमीटर में ब्लड भरा हुआ था, जो कि हमें विचलित कर गया और हम संयम खो बैठे और ये हम नहीं मान पाए कि उसने
जी
सुसाइड किया उसकी स्थिति को देखते हुए। हमारा मन ये मानने को तैयार नहीं है।
जी आ,
जब इनके यहाँ खुद ही
शैलेंद्र
हॉस्पिटल था
खटियार जी, आ,
जी।
जी जी, मैं समझ सकती हूँ और बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया हमारे साथ जुड़ने के लिए। लेकिन शैलेंद्र कटियार जी, बहुत सारे लोग बोल रहे हैं कि ये जो बच्चे आईआईटी में घुसते हैं और ये सबसे स्मार्ट ब्राइट बच्चे हैं, एंट्रेंस एग्जाम्स पास करके दूर दूर देश से जाते हैं आईआईटीज में, उनको ज़्यादा सपोर्ट की ज़रूरत है। आप इसको कैसे देखते हैं?
जी, सपोर्ट की बात तो ये है कि सपोर्ट उनको कितना मिल रहा है अंदर, इसके बारे में तो हम लोगों को जानकारी नहीं है। पारिवारिक सपोर्ट तो हम लोग दे रहे थे, लेकिन कॉलेज से बच्चों को कितना सपोर्ट मिल रहा है ये तो कॉलेज प्रशासन ही समझ सकता है। बच्चों के साथ वहाँ किस तरीके की कैजुअलिटी हो रही है ये तो केवल बच्चे ही जान सकते हैं।
1 महीना भी नहीं हुआ है, एक और बच्चे ने एलिजिडली डेथ बाय सुसाइड की है। आईआईटी को, इस देश को, जो बच्चे वहां पे प्रोटेस्ट कर रहे हैं, कटियार साहब आप क्या कहेंगे?
जी, बात ये है कि अब बच्चों में एक, जब सभी बच्चों को ये दिखाया जाता है कि काज ऑफ डेथ हैंगिंग है और बच्चों में एक स्ट्रेस है कि आखिर ये कैसे हो रहा है, क्यों हो रहा है, तो वो इसलिए प्रोटेस्ट की तरफ गए हैं।
उनको भी स्थितियां साफ नहीं लग रही।
शायद उन बच्चों को भी ऐसी स्थितियां लग रही हैं कि ये सब कुछ सुसाइड ही नहीं है, इसके पीछे भी कोई कारण है।
जी जी, शैलेंद्र कटियार जी, बबीता जी, बहुत शुक्रिया हमारे साथ जुड़ने के लिए। माफ़ी चाहते हैं कि आपके साथ ये हुआ, और भी लोगों के साथ ये हुआ है, बट हमारे साथ जुड़ने के लिए बहुत शुक्रिया। आपने अपना
हेलो
हमें कीमती वक्त दिया।
हेलो हेलो। हाँ मैडम।
हाँ जी बबीता जी, आप कुछ
हेलो।
कहना चाहती हैं? बोलिए बोलिए
हाँ,
बोलिए।
हम कहना ये चाहते हैं कि मेरी बेटी का वजन 1 कुंटल 13 किलो था। क्या छत का फैन इतना वजन सह सकता है? और उस पंखे की तस्वीरें मैं आपको भेज दूं, जो पंखा बिल्कुल जिसकी डस्ट नहीं हटी है, जो टेढ़ा भी नहीं हुआ है। मैं, आप चाहें तो मैं आपको तस्वीरें दिखा दूं।
जी नहीं मैम हमारे पास है नहीं नहीं हमारे पास है. कैन वी टेक दिस ऑफ प्लीज? हमारे पास है. शुक्रिया मैडम हमारे साथ जुड़ने के लिए. हम ये तस्वीरें ऐसे दिखा नहीं सकते हैं ऑन एयर, बट आपकी बातें हमने सुनी, सब लोग सुन रहे हैं आपकी बातें. मेरे पास और शब्द नहीं है आपसे बोलने के लिए, बट शुक्रिया हमारे साथ जुड़ने के लिए. All right. And as I said, I'm being joined by other panelists as well. Dheeraj Singh, who's the founder for Global IIT Alumni Support Group. Can I just come to you straight up? We just heard a family, a distraught family that lost their daughter just a month ago at IIT Guwahati. And as I said, this is not just IIT Guwahati's story. You would know this better because you reached out for numbers, for data that we even quoted on this show. What made you do that? As an alumni, how do you look at this?
Sneha, actually, I graduated in 2004 from IIT Kanpur. And since 2005 until now, I have been closely tracking the suicides in the campus over 20 years period. In the first 10 years alone, there were about 35 suicides, first 10 years since 2005. And in the last 10 years, the number is 92 suicides, which means about 3 times more approximately than the one, the growth of suicide it's kind of turning into an epidemic in the classroom, as you have mentioned. The reason I filed the RTI was because I'm also a student mentor. And one of the student, he was a student at IIT Kanpur. He texted me before his suicide a few months ago that he's not well, he's getting some issues in the campus, there is administrative apathy and so on and so forth. And he needed help. So I actually, as a mentor, did provide him help. But it's very sad for me that few months later, on 10th of Jan this year, I came to know he passed away by suicide. And for the reason that it's the same story as of Bimlesh,
How
Soumya,
sad.
there are so many. It's the same story, all repeating 127 times. That's the total number of student deaths in IITs alone over last 20 years.
Right. Right. Let me just very quickly go across to Ganesh Kohli as well. You've heard what Mr. Dheeraj Singh has said. Mr. Ganesh Kohli, you've done a study recently crunching the NCRB data as well. And it just shows India is sitting on an epidemic. And we often speak about the suicide epidemic, but this is beyond just speaking, it's data, it's hardcore data.
Oh, absolutely. And young people around our country are leaving schools like airplanes without a navigation system. And they eventually crash into a world of frustration, anger, sadness, disappointment, because we haven't really had any systemic guidance or counseling that's available. That's just not been part of our system. It has been about churning the academic lessons to get through those examinations. But what we've really missed is guidance and counseling. And you can see that those comparisons that eventually lead to what we are seeing today begin very early in school. Young people are being compared around the way they walk, the way they talk, the way they look, the way they dress, the way they draw, the way they do math. When this comparison becomes acute, you have competition. Everybody trying to get into an IIT, not because they really necessarily want to go to IIT, but because the neighbor is applying for IIT. They're putting their land, for a collateral. And when this competition becomes acute, violence is born. This violence is always often inflicted on themselves. So I think what we're really looking at is that this whole epidemic that we talk about, for us, as we've done this research, we find more and more that young people aren't getting the advice or the guidance. And we're also, particularly around around these extreme steps that are happening, everybody needs to be a gatekeeper. Like we have basic CPR training, we need to have gatekeeper training, whether it is university professors or school teachers or parents. I think that's really the need of the hour. Counseling and some basic gatekeeper training for everybody is the need of the hour as we see it.
Dr. Harish Shetty is waiting, but Dr. Harish Shetty, before I come to you, just one question to Dheeraj Singh, because that would also carry on to you, Dr. Harish Shetty. Dheeraj Singh, look at the demands of these students who are continuing their protests, and these visuals are quite honestly very unprecedented. I don't know whether you have seen such things, but I haven't as a journalist. We have been covering death by suicides across institutes, but these are visuals that are very telling. Just from one institute, look at the thousands who are there in the campus protesting and look at the demands. They're saying relaxation of attendance policies, reforms in mid-sem, end-sem schedules, restricting academic activities on weekends, reintroduction of mid-semester break, panel to oversee student-professor interactions and the grades that are given, restructuring of irrelevant mandatory courses, 24/7 accessible study spaces for all genders, reconsideration of freshers' interaction ban, make supplementary exams open for master's students. What do you make out of this?
There's a crying need of academic reforms in IITs. That's the core of it. I think there is a lot of comparison of IITs with global best colleges, engineering colleges, but my analysis of the suicide data alone shows that the suicide rate in IIT is twice as that in NITs. There are 31 National Institute of Technologies and 23 IITs. And it's 5 times that of top private colleges in the country. The IITs certainly are at the top in the ranking, but as far as their student flexibility, the agency to the student, which we see in best global colleges, it's squarely missing. And first, also, I wanted to add 2 things here. We not only need to provide the counseling, as my co-panelist has mentioned, but we also ought to find the reasons that, there is no systematic analysis or investigation into why certain steps were taken by a student. There is a long time from somebody who's taken a step and the time that somebody's thinking about it. So there is seriously no independent inquiry of commission. Most IITs just form a committee, internal committee, which often gives a clean sheet to themselves, saying so if the student is performing poorly, they will say it's student problem. If the student is performing well, they will say it's a relationship problem. This is the framework that they have. But there's no framework of finding an independent inquiry, of finding what best can be do in terms of remedying the situation. I haven't seen anywhere. The visuals that you are displaying are certainly heartbreaking. And, I mean, I have no words to say, but I have seen this story playing out so many times. In IIT Madras, same thing happened. In IIT Kanpur early this year, same thing happened. Last year in IIT Bombay, same thing happened. IIT Delhi, same thing happened. It's the same playbook. And in IIT Madras, the institute said that the student, he was an exceptional student. He died by suicide, and then the institute laid the blame on the relationship issues. After the student protested, as they're doing in IIT Guwahati, an independent committee was formed for the first time, and it found that the faculty, there were certain harassment issues by the faculty, and he was found guilty. We do not have any sort of system where student grievances are really sort of taken care in a way to resolve it for good, for long term.
Dr. Harish Shetty, do you want to take on from here? Because, look at what the panelists just said, what Dheeraj Singh just said. I mean, he's saying everything gets blocked. Everything gets compartmentalized. It's a student problem, it's a relationship problem, it's a family problem. There seems to be do we say that we are stuck? The best of the minds Supposedly, I mean, you know, the best
Not
of
at
the
all,
minds
not
itself
at
is a
all.
wrong word to use because, frankly, everybody has their own talents. But across the spectrum, across premier institutes, these are the students who have cracked exams, have gotten into it. They are buckling. Buckling to what? A failing system or pressure?
Let me start by saying, at the entry, we need to have a mental health policy which is inclusive in all IITs. At the entry, please screen voluntarily every child who needs help, who needs a little more help. And at the same time, all students should reveal if they're taking any psychological support, if they've been taking any psychiatric support in the past. And that is something which is very useful. Number two, counseling centers are fine, but counselors don't sit in your counseling center and wait for the children. Go to the hostels, reach out to the hostels, reach out to the classroom. Let the faculty say that one session in a month, the psychologist can teach on how to study, how to face stress, how to manage your sleep, how to stay away from gadgets, and how to do many other things which will help mental health. Wellness will improve. Number three, all IITs, it's a mental health epidemic, as Dheeraj said very clearly. All IITs should have a mental health checkups, and that's not for students. It should start from the faculty. If the director of the IIT and his family goes to do a mental health checkup, what happens? Stigma breaks, awareness improves, and students will automatically go and speak about it. Faculties who are supposed to be mentors need to be trained. You can't have just faculties who are loving, caring, because depression is invisible. Strain of the mind can be treated by friendship, love, travel, etc. But when there's a fracture of the mind, it is invisible in many cases. As the woman just said, she spoke to her at night, and she passed away in the morning. So you need skills among the faculties. Many of them are very dry, to understand what is going through the minds of the child. At the same time, IITs have mood indigos and tech fest. Why don't they have mental health fest? Why don't they focus on mental health enough? Because there is a mental health epidemic. And please don't politicize any suicide. Do a psychological autopsy. Dheeraj just mentioned, is there a system? There is a system. Psychological autopsy is the right method to find out what could be the most probable reason. Was the exams a straw on the back of the camel? Were there other issues in the child? Was there any family history? Well, were there any other issues? Committees which are formed are not equipped to understand what mental illness is, what stress is, what psychological problems are. Psychological autopsy is a must. Next, a student dies every 35 minutes and a young boy or a girl dies every 8 minutes. We need a mental health minister. We need this to be taken very seriously. You can't have a ministry of culture alone. We need a mental health minister in the state as well as at the center. And so we need to have a mental health movement inside IIT so that we can curb this. What happens in India? After such an event, everything is forgotten, and faculties and other members in the IITs use very generic reasons for the death of the child, and they also attribute motive, and they talk about the child in a very condescending manner. This is a wake-up call for all IITs. I would request the chairman, the Minister of Science, the Minister of Health and Minister of Education, not to just have a parliamentary committee to investigate, but put systems in place. I would request the alumni not to just invest in your buildings, invest in equipment, invest in human infrastructure and build systems around the mind. You may have cracked the JEE, but you may be fragile and brittle because intellectual growth and emotional growth may be unequal. So we need, my dear friends, a systems approach, psychological autopsy, mental health checkup, mental health fest, wellness activities, and also faculties who allow psychologists to go and speak about wellness inside the IITs so that students are not afraid to talk what is wrong. We need to kill shame and seek help, but that can start when the director and his wife goes and does a mental health checkup.
Well, you know, Ganesh Kohli, let me just come to you to take forward what Mr. Shetty has just said. There seems to be a complete error in how we are approaching this problem. Because what's out there in public domain, debates after debates, discussions after discussions, but every month we report something like that. If we can have data on student suicides in Kota. And we are picking this up only for one reason, to show you reach IIT or you reach premier institutes, this is what happens. But while you're preparing for these premier institutes, this is what's happening. Look at the deaths since, we have it say, since 2016 to 2023. 18, 26, last year it was 26 deaths by suicide in Kota alone. These are students who are preparing for entrance examinations for, you know, across from IIT engineering to medicine, what have you. So it is a fractured system in place, and while a lot is being discussed upon, unfortunately, am I being a pessimist by saying India is nowhere near changing its course?
Well, I think one is, I know that a lot of attention is given when something happens at an IIT. These are premium institutions. If you look at the dropout rates at premium institutions in the US, they are pretty high compared to some of the other institutions. And some foundations have rated the mental health support at premium US institutions as at D grade. I think this problem is countrywide. Actually, Rajasthan ranks number 10 among the states when it comes to student suicides. I think we are talking about a lot happening across many different institutions in the country. And we have actually stoked an environment of fear-based learning. We have stoked an environment of stress-based learning, and we've marinated in the problem far too long. I love how Dr. Shetty starts to talk about solutions. Actually, mental distress you could have as a 35-year-old, as a 15-year-old, as an 18-year-old. He said it, he hit the nail on the head, Dr. Shetty, when he said we have shamed that. And we've said that if you're not worried before your exam, if you're not stressed, then there's something wrong. That if you're not fearful in your academics, then there is something wrong. Students don't love or hate their subjects. They love or hate their teachers. When there is love in the classroom, when I genuinely want to go to be an engineer because it is my competence, I will hold a bottle of water and be able to see the physics, chemistry, and math there. I will not go through all of these stress levels. We are actually pushing people on borrowed paths. We are saying that there is one way to success, that there is this thing that you need to do. And this is really the crux as I see it. We need more love-based decision-making. We need to start making academics fun. This kid who gets stressed in school or in college that says academics is different from fun is the same adult who says work is different from life. Work is the punishment, life is the reward. In school and in college, academics is the punishment and computer games or sports at the end of it is the reward. The fact is, if you are an IITian or if you want to be an engineer, you go on a football field. You can study every concept in geometry and algebra on the football field. That if you play football, you can be one of the best engineers. Actually, there's so much in physics there on that field. But we have actually put academics as very serious business. It's stressful. There is this ugly truth that most people believe, that you have to be very, very worried when it comes to academics. And we need to stop doing that and ask young people to choose based on their competence, not on competition. Competition is borrowed path. Yes, we will compete with people eventually, but we need to help young people discover their competence, and therefore and even at the IITs, these people would have had, like Dr. Shetty said, if there was a filtration exercise where there was an opportunity to assess what the resilience quotient was at the beginning of the program, and then, accordingly address. So I think there are many, many solutions, and as a community, we need to marinate in the solutions, not in the problems.
Even though what you were talking had so much of irony in it, I still couldn't help smirk or, chuckle in between, because just the idea of bringing the two together was so refreshing. Dr. Hari Shetty, you had your hand up. Please.
Yeah, I would like to say that we need to educate the students of IIT to have a good sleep hygiene. They don't sleep. They're up till 4 o'clock playing games. They're up till 4 o'clock on their gadgets. Why? Get a strong sleep hygiene activity, have a strong gadget addiction, anti-gadget addiction activity, and at the same time, a lot of sessions for the parents, even when they're not there. I have done induction activities in IITs and MBA colleges. There are few parents who ask the faculty, how much will be his package when he passes? So I think we need an all-round action. And IITs are the guardians of the students. Remember, it's your responsibility to build systems. If you do not have systems, if you do not have psychological vigilance, then it is psychological negligence if somebody dies. So it's extremely important that you build your mental health systems and you build your emotional defense systems. Put all your faculties to learn to smile, to learn to laugh, and also to understand how to identify difficult children, high-risk children in the classroom, even when they don't come and speak to you. How to have your khabris, which means buddies in the class who are trained to listen to difficulties and listen to high-risk chats and report it to the academic head or the teacher or the counselor. So we need to build systems and bring down suicides in IITs. It's a shame that it is happening at such a level.
Right. In fact, the point that you mentioned about sleep hygiene, that's something that can be a very important takeaway for anybody who is watching, particularly for any youngster, because for some reason this generation believes that sleep is a luxury, it's not a necessity. If they have to prioritize, sleep will be the least, and I see that in my office as well. That needs to change. But Dheeraj Singh, if I can come to you, last word from you. We're running out of time, Mr. Dheeraj Singh. Being a student mentor, being an alumni of the IIT, and if you can have the shots of these protests at IIT Guwahati on the screens, what would you tell the students, the college? Because remember, while we are talking data and statistics, it's important for our viewers and us as media workers to understand that behind these data is possibly every family who's still waiting for a closure, like Soumya's parents are.
So to the students, actually, for me, all the students, whether they're wingmates or the seniors, or even the alumni, they are the responders, the first, second, third layer of responders. They should tune in to each other as to what is really happening in our life. I think we've tuned out. So we should tune in to ask each other, are we doing okay? Is there actually any suicidal ideation that's running, across our mind? Can we seek help together? So there is some empathy and compassion. I think that's squarely missing because there is a sort of a rush in our daily life. To the parents, I would say, do not buy into this placement-related PR, which is heavily done by media and IITs in cahoots. And they try to portray that every student in IIT will come out with a crore plus package. The truth is the average IIT salary is about 20 lakhs. And we have recently heard that in IIT Bombay, it has gone down, the lowest package has gone to 4 lakhs. So let's not put too much of pressure of expectation on the students. This is to the parents. To the faculty, I would say, please slack off. We need to give more greater agency to the students, flexibility to the students.
Right. I cannot thank each one of you enough for joining us. It's quite late into the night, but this is an important conversation. I'm glad that all of you are willing to be part of it. Ganesh Kohli, Dheeraj Singh, as well as Dr. Hari Shetty, thank you very much for joining us. And I do hope the government and the stakeholders are listening to this as our families. Yes, Dr. Hari Shetty, then the closing statement from you, 30 seconds. Yes, please.
Yeah. If you have anybody talking about a suicidal ideation, screen the person for suicide. Don't brush it off. Kill shame and seek help.
And
Thank you.
I'm going to add
Absolutely,
to
and
Dr.
all through the
Shakti.
show to our viewers, we've been running the helpline number. It's very important that you take a note of that helpline number. You never know when you or your loved ones will know it. It's an SOS number that all of us need to have, just like the emergency of your nearest hospital would be. So I'm totally out of time. I'm really sorry. I will have to wind this up. But thank you so much for your time.